to Auburn Community Television on Wave Channel 20 and this episode of Meet the Artist. Today our guest is Blue Burke. Blue Burke is an illustrationist and she does absolutely fabulous illustrations. One of the things that I find absolutely amazing about him is that she finds a way to draw into your deepest emotions. You'll find that there's a little bit of grunge, there's a little bit of fun, and there's things that are very thought-provoking. So I think you're going to find this episode very interesting. Welcome, Blue. I'm so glad you could join us.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
So you're one of our next generation for the Placer Art Studio Tours. And I'm going to explain that a little bit about what the next generation is.
Okay.
Next generation is an introduction of young emerging artists in the Placer Arts community. And it is to introduce them so that you can meet the newer artists, see the work that they're performing. And Blue is one of our artists. I'm so glad that you're able to join us on the Placer Art Studio Tour.
I am as well.
So Blue, as I said, does illustrations, and she works in pen, she works in markers, and she works in color pencils. And we're going to be talking about each one of those areas that she works in. But first we're going to get a little bit of her background, which is very interesting. So how did you start out and embrace the artist in you?
I started to take art seriously during high school, and by the end of my 4 years in high school, I had a full portfolio of work and a very short resume. And after that, I took a break from school to begin tattooing.
And so you have been you're a tattoo artist and have been doing that for several years?
Yes, I have. I had a 1-year apprenticeship, and for the last 4 to 5 years, I've been a full-time artist.
And so then what led you then to decide to go, I guess it's to Sierra College, to study art?
I wanted to start hacking away at my AA in illustration. And that was because I wanted to gain more direct knowledge and experience to enhance the tattoo work I do for my clients.
And so when you're doing your illustrations, you really do dig deep within yourself, and you can see that in your work. And we're going to see several of your pictures that you've done. But one of the things is, what area do you like to work in best? Because I said you do pen, you do color pencils, and you do markers.
Depends on my mood. I'm definitely drawn towards color work, so I'd have to say the Prismacolor pencils.
You and I share where we both started out in black and white, and then we decided to go into the color.
Yes.
And it is a difficult transition, but I think one that you've done very well. And so let's start looking at some of the work that Blue has done. So let's start with your black and white, which is your pen work. And this one is called From the Drudges. And if you would like to explain about this particular illustration.
Yes, I created it with Copic liners. It is based on gesture drawings from my figure drawing class. And I pieced them to the back of the paper and used a light table to shine the group of gesture drawings through it. And then from there, I went with the vision I had inside my head.
And were you given any scope of what this drawing was supposed to be from the beginning? Or was this something that was from a class and it was an assignment?
It was from a class, but the subject matter was really open. I try to take any opportunity that I can to make something personal in an artwork. So that's why I went with this. I like to use texture, have a lot of contrast. Yeah.
And so this is actually, when we're saying it's pen, it's an ink. Is that what you're using? Or explain the pens that you use, because they come in different widths, don't they?
They do. They're a set of fine liners. Copic also creates markers. I love their fine liners. They're waterproof, and they're anywhere from 1.0 to 0.03 in width on the tips.
And that will determine the thickness of the line that you get in your drawing.
Yes.
Well, this is actually, I love this one.
Thank you.
Let's go on.
Okay.
And the next one we're going to be looking at is She-Devil. And so tell me about how this one came about and the process in creating this one.
This was just a personal piece in between school and work. I just wanted to have a drawing that showed a real attitude, and I wanted to get that in the pose, in the personification of the character. And so, yeah.
Well, this is absolutely amazing, and I'm going to take a peek at it again because we saw it briefly before we met, and I love the fact that there's so much depth that you're able to achieve just with these different tips
Yes.
on these pens. All right, so our next one is yet in using the same pens, and what is the name of this one?
In the Course of an Evening. This is another personal work in between school and work. I just wanted to show a piece of two vampires. I did my own spin on it, and I really tried to use contour lines to create not only texture but depth as well, in between the wings and the tapestry.
So when you're talking about creating the depth, so do you get more depth by using a thicker line or a thinner line?
You can use it from not only the thickness and the thinness, but also building them on top of each other. A very gentle layering process.
Oh, so now I would have never thought of doing this was going to be any type of layering.
Yeah, about one or two.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can technically see it right here in the thin lines, and then we use the same, actually a smaller tip, and make the very deepest points to give more detail.
Now this one also has the black in the back. Now do you do the background first, or is that something you came in later after you had the rest of it done?
Typically I'm 50-50 on backgrounds, and if I'm not 100% on a detail during my work process, I'll hold off on it. I fill in what I know for sure, and then that usually gives me an understanding on how to do the rest of what I'm uncertain about.
Well, I love it. I love the use of the different, again, sizes of tips that you did and the depth that you did achieve just in black and white. It's wonderful work.
Thank you.
All right, so the next thing we're coming up with are your colored pencils.
Yes. All right.
And this is one of the ones I think is kind of a fun one, and this is your iguana.
Yes, the chartreuse iguana. I was kind of wanting to try a new way of finding out project ideas. So I put a bunch of different types of animals and elements and plants on little strips of paper, put them in some jars, and then just pick at random what I'm going to do. It felt great. It felt like a new type of freedom. I ended up getting iguana and amethyst. So with those two options as inspiration, I created this piece, and it's loosely stylized after Asian style paintings.
So the amethyst was the color then that you were going to be using? Is that how it got incorporated into this?
Yes, and at the end of the tail on this piece, it has little amethyst stones as well. And it looked really nice with the chartreuse.
It does. I love the colors that have come out in this.
Thank you.
And these are color pencils.
Yes.
That's amazing. You've got such intense colors with colored pencils.
A lot of layering.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Now, when you use this and you're using the color pencil, do you do any shading with your hand, or is this all done with just the stroke on the pencil itself?
This is done just with the pencil itself.
Okay.
I don't use any tortillons or my hand. It's just layering and pressing hard and using a hard surface behind the drawing.
All right, the next one is also in colored pencil.
Okay.
And this is called Imprisonment. And first off, tell me the story behind Imprisonment.
This is actually a school project piece in my illustration class. We are designed to make art response pieces to articles that he has given us. And the one that I went with is an article that criticizes the system of the American prison.
And it's absolutely, I love this one because it really shows taking an article, which is describing something in words, and then you're taking that and putting it in this picture form. And I think you have captured this so beautifully. So let's talk a little bit about the different elements, how you did capture this story. What we start out with is that you're talking about the gold that you put in the chains, and that came from the cost of incarceration, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about other elements that we have in here and how they came from that article?
When I read that article, I imagined somebody that was burnt out inside of a system that even after they served their time, they weren't given the proper rehabilitation. So I wanted to make the individual in this piece look like a piece of charcoal that's burnt out. Mm-hmm. And in the smoke, we see a noose, kind of like these problems are still out of reach almost.
And you can never get away from them then.
Right. And also unresolved.
Unresolved with them. Now, what is it that, why the headband that you have here that's in color? Was that depicting anything specific in the article, as you recall?
It's actually his hands holding his own skull.
Oh my gosh, it is.
It's kind of molded into the rest of him.
I see that. It's hard to look at it from this particular angle. Wow. So there's so many elements that you can take from that story and then you carry it on into this.
Without doubt.
That's absolutely amazing. And this is what's great about illustrations, because they tell the story within the illustration itself.
Exactly.
All right. Then we have this big one who is dominating our screen today. And so tell me about this, because this started out as a small sketch, similar to the ones that we've seen.
Yes.
And then we've now have this huge one. So let's start with, first off, talk about it, and then how we ended up with this beautiful piece like this.
I was given a wood panel that I primed with gesso for a large piece. This is the largest piece to date. I started with several sketches in my sketchbook of the flowers, the little imps on the side, and the coffin gal. And I used a projector and my computer to project these sketches from the computer onto this wood panel.
And so that way you could just increase the size as however to fit the board that you were given.
Yes.
Now, after you got to that process, then did you come in then at that point with the color pencils actually directly on the board?
Yes, I did.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. We are going to have to move along real quickly because we.
All right, we got two more.
Let's do the markers, because we get. This is actually incredible because now we get two markers, which are, to me, would be thicker. Mm-hmm. And so, tell me about this particular painting.
This is created with Copic markers. It's one of a couple of finished pieces I've made with alcohol-based markers, and they have a felt tip and a chisel tip.
And so what can you tell me about was your inspiration for this particular piece?
I typically draw females inside of my work, and I wanted to show something a little more abstract and to test out my experience with these markers. And I like stones, gems, and I wanted to just put my own spin on that theme.
That's amazing. So let's go with our last picture, our illustration. This is the praying mantis.
Yes.
And so tell me real quickly about this one.
I love biomechanic work, and this piece was kind of an ode to those type of motivations and inspirations in other artists. It's meant to depict a predator type of insect and hiding behind these defensive spines and plant life. And so that's why I came up with it. And it's also Copic marker and liner.
Again, absolutely amazing work. So you're going to be on the Placer Art Studio Tour, so why don't you tell our viewers how they can come by and actually see your work, and maybe talk about this a little bit more with you, because it's really fascinating how you can take a story and put it in the pictures.
Okay. I'm at number 38 on the Placer Art Studio Tour. That's at the Red Barn Studios in Granite Bay. If you would like to find me on Facebook or Instagram, you'll find me under Colorful Corpse.
I really do thank you for joining us. This has been such a treat, and I am so thrilled that you are participating in the tour. It's always great to have someone that's young, bringing something completely new into our world, and I thank you so very much.
Thank you, too.
I also want to thank you for tuning in to Auburn Community Television in this episode of Meet the Artist. Meet the Artist hopes to introduce artists just like Blue, and so you can see the different types of media and the different types of work out there. If you want to experience more, I hope you'll come on the Placer Art Studio Tour.